One.
Okay. Uh, hey there, I'm Mike Klonsky here with my brother Fred and coming at you on Lumpin' Radio, WLPN 105.5 FM in Chicago. We're doing today's show on Zoom from our own homes. Good morning, my brother. How are you doing today?
Well, I had my outdoor walk with Ulysses, so I'm doing fine.
Yeah, and Ulysses got tore up by a pit
Yeah,
bull.
we did
And you
battle.
too.
We did battle with a pit bull the other day who came at us, but
You're recovering.
we're recovering. We're fine.
Our guest today is Chicago's own Avery R. Young. Avery is an interdisciplinary artist and educator from the west side of Chicago. Hey,
What's hard?
Avery's work chronicles Black life, history, imagination, and culture through language, visuals, sound, and performance. Did I get that right, Avery? Avery, you with us?
Yes, you did.
Is it okay if we call you Chicago's own Avery Young?
You should call me Chicago's own. Nothing but Chicago could create a person like me. So that's a good thing.
I wanted to ask you about that, Avery. It seems like Chicago has become a center for young or not so young anymore, kind of activists, poets, artists, musicians. A group of you kind of go back a ways, right? And have kind of hung together all these years.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. Yes, myself, Krista, Kevin Koval, all of us kind of came up around the same time, hanging out, working, reading, teaching together. A lot of us from young Chicago authors, a lot of us coming through LitX at another level bookstore. There was Spices and Rituals and the Gill Complex. It's just so many various venues that we all kind of came and crossed paths with each other. And I don't necessarily recall any of my time in those spaces without there being a pause for whatever was happening politically. I remember this 96, there was such a campaign to free Mumia Abu-Jamal. And a lot of us were really active in what would then be
Abu Jamal, the political prisoner in Philly, who was falsely
police officer, yes.
Yeah. And there's been a global campaign really to get him free, and we're still fighting that fight.
Right. And still fighting that. And within that, I got involved in education and teaching art and just really understanding the ways in which the art could be used to address social issues and political issues of that nature. And my heroes have been Nina Simone and Gil Scott-Heron. So I don't necessarily think it's anything particular to Chicago. I've traveled enough to understand that there are plenty political movements within the creative spaces in many places. But I definitely was part of what was happening in Chicago within that time. I don't necessarily understand what it is to be a creative and not think and reflect on the worlds and the times in which we live. In all of those worlds. Now, so I exist in my personal life, but then I have to go out here in the public and be something and be somebody within that public. And so I can't imagine the work not engaging who I'm shaping myself to be as a man in that public spectrum.
Well, go ahead, Fred.
What I was going to ask, you're what they call a multidisciplinary artist, right? You work in
Yes.
Is that something you were trained in, or is this something that that you learned on your own? What's the story of your history in this?
So my training is within music, theater, and writing. The visual sculpting stuff came as a result of a residency I had at the Arts Incubator at the University of Chicago, led by Theaster Gates. I was given this studio with all this space, and so the poems just got bigger.
Uh,
It started with bigger sheets of paper, then they just got big, and I was like, oh, okay, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing with the work now. So
How do you see yourself, Avery? Do you see yourself as a singer, a musician first, and then a artist or a poet first, or what?
I see myself as a poet first, and I use various materials in which to express those poems. So sometimes I sing the poems, sometimes I recite the poems, sometimes I sculpt the poems, and I really think the base of me is with what I'm doing with language. So even when you look at the lyrics of the songs, you see, oh, okay, this is what he's doing with language. So at first, the base is what I'm doing with language. So
Can you give us an example? Like,
let's see, what's going on? That would be an example. Down on the avenue, Papa's drinking and thinking I'm not coming home no more. Him cheering watch cartoons, unaware I was there, and Daddy won't walk through that door. So the moan, the cheering, always I'm playing language for trying to recall the ways in which I heard my mothers and aunts and cousins speak when I was little. That was not necessarily what was in an English book or a grammar book, but was the way in which people communicated and knew what each other was talking about.
Are you?
wow, yeah,
Yeah, that was great.
So you see, sometimes you also definitely have to kind of see it in the context of its syntax. So the ways in which I'm spelling words and I've created like this code, and you'll see what that means when it's, like I said, at the base, I'm working with language or linguistics. Somebody called me a polyglot. All right, Al, shout out to Allison Glenn, a polyglot. I'm like, oh, okay.
yeah. The things you do with language is truly amazing, and it's contagious too. I mean, a lot of other young, especially African American writers I've seen, have picked up on it. And at first, I thought it was just a trick to keep old white guys from understanding it. But I tell you the truth, I'm into it. Yeah.
No, not at all.
I'm gonna have to start spelling my name.
Not at all.
Hey, Avery, can I ask a question?
Not at all. It's yes.
You know, I was going to ask, we're living in a kind of a strange moment in history right now. And I was wondering whether a poet or an artist looks at this current moment maybe differently than the general population, and whether you do, and how is that difference represented? I'm talking about obviously the COVID-19 virus and the fact that we're all living in isolated situations right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, how does that impact your work, Avery?
Well, the difference, I guess the main difference between myself and the rest of the world, or someone who's not necessarily a creative when it comes to a moment of being isolated, is I usually choose my periods of isolation in order to create work. I'm now in a space where I don't have no other choice but to be isolated. But it's a very different kind of isolation because there is the room to do the work, which I am doing. I'm writing like all day, every day. But there is a level of anxiety and thought about what's going on in the outside world that I don't have when I go to a residency and I lock down. And recently I went to December, I was at Ragdale, and I spent the month just at the laptop, hammering out some new work. Wasn't necessarily concerned about what was going on in the world. Linda made dinner for us every evening. Came downstairs at 6:30, ate, went back upstairs and got back to writing because I was like, I have to finish this manuscript before these 19 days are over or 20 days are over. And now I'm kind of distracted in a way of wanting to know what should I be doing? When it's safe to go out, when it's safe to go outside. And like I said, in normal situations where I'm isolated, I'm not worried about, the next time I'll be.
Are you living by yourself? Are you living by yourself?
No. I'm living with my big brother. He's in his. Up there, I'm back here. He's up there, I'm back here.
You had a residency at Ragsdale?
Ragdale.
Yeah,
Ragdale.
explain to folks, that's really an interesting place to be.
Okay.
So
Ragdale.
Yeah,
Ragdale is a writer's residency. Some also musicians have had residencies there. But it's in Lake Forest. It's in the middle of a prairie. And you go and you get a studio and a bed, some hot, what they say, hots and a cot. And you go there to do work or relax or whatever it is. I went there to, like I said, to start and basically finish a manuscript that was successful. And that because I was, like I said, I was thoroughly concentrated, not necessarily even worried about what was going on in I will, like I said, I will say that I think it will take, if I was to start a manuscript now, I know it would take way more than 19 days to figure it out, simply because I'm so concerned about what else is happening.
By a manuscript, are you talking about a book? Are you working on a book?
Yes, I worked on a play, actually, a play about the 1968 riots on the west side of Chicago, on Madison Avenue. So it's a play written in verse. So,
that was when my wife and I moved to Chicago. Was that summer in '68, and our office was right on Madison Street. Our SDS office, Social Students for Democratic Society.
Wow.
And 1608 West Madison, and
that's right off Ashland.
Right off Ashland. Yeah, we got there, and there was city was burning, the west side was burning, and tanks were rolling up Madison Street.
Yeah.
And the cops used to stop us every night on our way home and say, "What are you doing here in this neighborhood?" They thought we were drug dealers.
Crazy.
They thought we were either drug dealers or trying to buy drugs.
Right. It is still the case. White people still get asked what they doing on Madison. And it's crazy because it's way more than actually live there. It's like they're
I know, it's changed an awful lot since '68.
Well, of course, the difference now is that Ashland and Madison Street has all these condominiums and expensive places to live now. So
yeah,
a little different than in '68.
Definitely.
Your music, I mean, it's kind of amazing to me, but the mix between you're kind of chronicling Black history and culture on the one hand, and also bringing in politics on the other. The most amazing thing I've seen you do was that piece on Lead in the Water. Which I know it's probably came out of looking at Flint, Michigan, but it could just easily been about Chicago. And
Flint is a space where the water has been a situation, especially when you think about times like these where water is what you need to wash your hands, and what it is to have to wash your hands in contaminated water, right? you know, so
I hadn't thought about that, but that's a great point.
Yeah, I mean, and again, in Flint, it's not necessarily the only space where people have to figure that out. There are plenty of spaces around this earth right now where water is not necessarily an option for folk.
And where actually wars are being fought over water.
Yeah.
But also in terms of the coronavirus, if you think about it, which I just did because of what you said. Telling people to wash their hands religiously, for 20 seconds, it makes sense. It's a necessity. But if you're washing it in contaminated lead water, cancer-causing water, and then
or bottles, or the water the bottles of water that you have to conserve, right?
Yes.
In order to use clean water. How does this happen now, or how do you navigate through?
It's like it's like telling people to shelter in place when they have no shelter.
Well, we keep saying that this virus, in a lot of ways, has laid bare all those kind of contradictions that we've been that all of us that are active in the movement and in the arts and other things have been talking about for years. Medical care, the having a home, when you stay, like Mike was saying, staying hashtag stay home when you have no home, wash your hands when you have no water, go call a doctor when you can't afford one. All these things have kind of come out even just more glaringly, but they've all been there all the time.
Can you do a little bit of lead in the water for us?
Yeah, for sure. Lead in the water. Lead in the water to run. There's lead in the water. God is playing God with water. And they knew it. They knew what it would do to the children. Oh, yes, they knew it. God is playing God with the water.
Wow.
Very nice. Thank you.
I think our next show we're going to have your buddy Krista Franklin on.
Krista from another mister, yes.
How did you two know each other? How did you connect?
We connected in the 90s, and that whole crossing of myself, Kevin, Mario, Guild Complex, YCA, Folade, and a bunch of other people were the reason why Krista and I met. I think, if I remember, I went to go hear her read. And after the reading, we all kind of like hung out, and then we just clicked. So it was just like.
What about your band? You have a band now.
The Deacon Board, yes, I have a band. The Deacon Board, we do.
The Deacon Board.
The Deacon Board.
How'd you get that name?
Church. Yeah, it was just being in church in the Deacon Board. I felt like it was something to call ourselves, because people kept saying, "Oh, it's like going to church, like going to church, like going to church." So I was like, "Well, call it the Deacon Board."
And what are you doing together now?
Well, we are texting each other. call each other. Seriously though, a lot of the dates that we had were canceled due to this situation. But
Yeah.
we have some stuff coming. I can't really talk about it now because we still have to
You can break it first right here. You can break it first.
This might be the moment to
things.
get it out
But
there.
we're hoping to stream a concert pretty soon.
This is Avery R. Young,
With
who's about to give us a scoop here on WLPN
Scoop the
105.5
tea.
FM.
Yeah, I've been talking to them and trying to round them up to do a concert. Like they necessarily didn't want to necessarily do anything or go live in the midst of everybody else doing something live. I definitely wanted to wait.
But you've got some great videos out there on YouTube.
Yeah, they can look at videos and I'm hanging out Saturday night on IG reading poems with my people from Lidex and Spices. It's the Insta Live poetry set Saturdays that start at 9 p.m. Eastern time. So that's 8 o'clock Chicago time. So I'm hanging out with people and we reading poems. Some poems somebody come up with in 1994. I'm like, what is going on? 1994 poems. I'm reading all new poems though, because I'm doing nothing but literally writing poems every day. I stopped writing poems to do this. I'm like, oh snap! It's 1:39.
What's your take on identity politics?
Ooh.
How do you see the way people are identifying themselves now, which is a lot different than from our experience back in our day, in terms of sexuality, gender, race?
Yeah. All right. I mean, I have no problem with it. I think the world is supposed to evolve and it's supposed to move. And the first thing I think a poet should do when they're writing or any artist should do is figure out what comes out of their hand that doesn't come out of anybody else's hand, that distinguish them from the next person, which is really about crafting your own identity as an artist and in your craft. So I think people should have the room to identify themselves as they please. But I also think with that identification, because you have to also be responsible in the modifiers and understanding that some of these modifiers people put their back and bone into them for these adjectives to exist. So you have to be responsible with those things. So it really at this point for me, let live and let have. Get with it,
Well, we just lost my brother.
You just lost your brother.
You see him on the screen? I don't see him anymore.
I don't see him on the screen at all.
So, we'll give him a second to come back, or maybe he won't. I don't know.
No. You're the one that's recording, right? So
I got the power. I was on the issue of identity politics. Let me ask you one question about. It seems to me, at least, as someone who kind of follows the arts, that right now the stars, you could say, in the visual arts and in writing seem to be African American men and women. I know Carrie James Marshall and Kennedy Wiley. These are all names that people know have crossed over into the popular culture. And does that strike you in any way as interesting or worthy of a point?
I think Langston Hughes said it best. One day, I'm gonna eat at the table with you, and you'll see how beautiful I am, and then you'll be ashamed, and of all this time that you've kept me from the table, and So I don't necessarily think it's strange or even poignant at this time. I think, especially in times of this, especially in times like these, or in throughout other periods where history has been murky and dark, um, the the majority or the privileged class has always looked to people of color to somehow give advice or remedy out of situations that they created. So
That's
you know,
exactly right. That's exactly
right,
right.
right. And so it's Sammy Davis will sing to the troops and make everybody feel better. Oh, Michael Jackson will do this, and everybody will feel better. Oh, whomever will go on and make everybody feel better. So in that regard, it doesn't seem to be any anything that's necessarily interesting. What I'm thinking about is, why is that the task of these artists of color as opposed to
Interesting.
the task of artists that don't necessarily have that have the color, that we could just can't we just exist and make work and not be given the task to give remedy to things in which we did not, to disasters we did not create. So that's the interesting part to me. How much I've heard people say, "Oh, your voice is so healing." We really do need to hear it. We really do need to. I'm looking at them like, okay, all right, that's
No
cool.
one's stopping them from hearing it, is it?
Right, right. I'm just like, okay, that's cool. But I'm compelled to do what I am doing, regardless of what is happening in the world, or what has happened in the world. Because, like I said, because I am a creative, and my body, when I am in this type of isolation, my body thinks, "Oh, he's creating." So I'm just doing what's natural to
I'm back.
we see. I'm doing what has become natural to me in a situation where I'm isolated. I'm creating work because that's what my body thinks. Oh, he's creating work. He's not ripping and running the streets today. He's sitting down. He's being still. Okay, let's send all these thoughts and things his way because he's gonna document it. And so that's what's happening. That's what's happening with me now. But it it would it would be happening, um corona or not. It's just that the fact that there is this thing out here in this world that just makes me a bit more aware of what's going outside of my, or can
Okay,
be at least.
we're just about out of time, Avery.
Okay.
What? I missed so
Yeah,
much.
it's been about a half an hour.
It is that.
Avery, thank you so much for coming on with us.
No, thank you. Thank you. It's something to do. It's good to see people. And Zoom is Zoom. It's a way where it happens.
All right, well, be sure and listen in next week.
Friday, right?
Well, this Friday it's going to be you.
Next week. Okay.
People, actually, we're taping in advance, but this show will be on Friday on WLPN 105.5 FM, streaming live at lumpinradio.com. And then the Friday after, we're going to have Krista Franklin, so tune in then. In the meantime,
I will.
stay safe and stay well.
Yeah, it's Thursdays and Fridays is my lumping days. Mario on Thursdays and you
There you go.
on Friday. So it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, we got a whole group over there at Bumping Radio.
Yeah.
We miss them. All right. You take care.
Take care, Mario. All right, brother.
All right. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that's going to work. It was breaking up a lot, so we'll see. I'll see what it sounds like when we get off.
See what it sounds like. Maybe we can use parts of it or whatever.
Something. Yeah. All right. See
All
ya.
right. Bye.